That cat curled up on your sofa? You might think you know it, but its story is absolutely epic. We're talking about a journey that stretches across continents and goes back literally millions of years. So let's dive right into this surprising 10 million year saga of the house cat.
Okay, so here it is, the domestic cat. And get this, there are over 600 million of them all around the world. That makes them one of the most successful species on the entire planet. They're our companions, yeah, our roommates. And let's be honest, sometimes they feel a little bit like our overlords, right?
Well, the answer isn't nearly as simple as you'd think. It's actually a massive detective story. The clues are written in DNA, in fossils, in ancient human history, and it takes us back millions of years, way before anyone ever thought to leave a saucer of milk out on the porch.
So to crack this case, here's our game plan. We're going to trace their wild family tree, follow their amazing migrations all over the world, meet their very surprising ancestor, uncover the two-part story of how they were tamed, and finally, figure out how the modern house cat got its stripes, or, its blotches.
All right, first up, a wild family tree. Let's explore this incredible family our pets belong to. It turns out every single cat, whether it's big or small, is part of one single ancient clan, and they all share this deep and kinda secret history.
I mean, it's kind of hard to believe, right? But this roaring tiger and this little tabby, they're cousins. Seriously. Under the skin, they are so similar. In fact, it's even a challenge for experts to tell a lion skull from a tiger skull. And that similarity, well, it made tracing their history really, really tough, until now.
Thanks to some powerful new DNA technologies, scientists have been able to trace all 37 species of cat back to one single common ancestor. We're talking about a panther-like predator that was roaming around Southeast Asia almost 11 million years ago. That's where it all started. So, over millions and millions of years, the descendants of this one ancient cat started to split off, creating all these new branches on the family tree. The very first ones to go their own way were the ancestors of today's big roaring cats. Then, over time, other groups split off too, and eventually, that gave rise to the lineage that leads straight to our pets.
So today, all 37 species of cat fit into one of 8 big genetic groups, or lineages. And our little house cat, it belongs to the very last lineage to show up. And it shares that group with close relatives like the wild cat, the sand cat, and the jungle cat. Okay, so how on earth did this family, which started in Asia, end up conquering pretty much every corner of the globe? Well, the answer is just an incredible story of migration and adaptation.
The key, believe it or not, was geology. Think about it. During the ice ages, massive amounts of water were locked up in ice, so sea levels dropped like a rock. This uncovered huge land bridges, like the famous one at the Bering Strait, which basically turned oceans into highways. It allowed animals to just walk from one continent to another. And you bet the cats seized that opportunity. The first great feline migration happened about 9 million years ago. The descendants of that original predator left home base in Asia and just started spreading out. They crossed into Africa using a land bridge at the Red Sea and into North America right across the Bering Strait. Then, a few million years later, it happened again. Sea levels dropped, and a second wave of migration kicked off. This time, cats moved into South America for the very first time. And here's a crazy twist. Some lineages, like the ancestors of the cheetah, actually migrated backwards, from North America all the way back into Asia and Africa.
So that's the epic journey of the whole cat family. But our story is about one specific cat. So let's zoom in and meet the single, kinda unlikely ancestor that's responsible for every single house cat on the planet today.
So here it is, Felis sylvestris libica, the African wildcat, and the DNA evidence is overwhelming. Scientists analyze nearly 1,000 cats from all over the world, and it all points to one thing. This specific subspecies, from the Near East and Africa, is the one and only wild ancestor of our pests, full stop.
So you gotta ask, why this wildcat? Why not its tougher European cousin? Well, the answer seems to come down to personality. The African wildcat is just naturally less aggressive. It's more tolerant of other creatures, and that included those strange new two-legged creatures, us humans, who were just starting to build the first villages.
And that brings us to the moment of first contact. This is the beginning of one of the most successful partnerships in all of history. But it wasn't forged out of love or affection. No, it was all about convenience.
Yeah, the whole story of cat domestication, it wasn't a single aha moment. It's really more like a 2-act play. Act 1 happens when we humans first started farming. But Act 2, which is arguably even more important, happens thousands of years later, when one specific culture turns the cat into a global superstar.
You know, for the longest time, everyone just assumed cats were first domesticated in ancient Egypt, but then this discovery came along and changed absolutely everything. On the island of Cyprus, archaeologists found a 9,500-year-old grave, and in it was a human buried right alongside a cat. Now, cats aren't native to Cyprus, so that means people had to have brought them there by boat. This points to a really close relationship thousands of years before the first pharaoh.
So, okay, the partnership started there, in the Fertile Crescent, but it was really in Egypt where the cat's journey to global domination kicked into high gear. This was Act 2, the second critical wave of them spreading all over the world.
In Egypt, the whole relationship just evolved. You can see it in their art. These paintings show cats moving out of the barn and right into the home. They weren't just useful pest controllers anymore. They became cherished members of the family, loved for their companionship and their grace. And this cultural shift, well, it made them incredibly popular.
And the cool thing is, genetic analysis of ancient cat bones completely backs up this two-act story. It shows two totally distinct waves of cats spreading out. First, you have those farmer cats from the Near East, spreading along with agriculture. Then, thousands of years later, you get this huge explosion of the popular Egyptian cat, spreading like wildfire along trade routes and basically conquering the old world.
Which brings us all the way to the present day and to the cat we know and love. But believe it or not, there are still a few final surprises left in its evolutionary story.
Okay, so have you ever really looked closely at a tabby cat? There are actually two main patterns. The original, wild pattern is called mackerel. It's those thin, parallel stripes. But the blotched pattern, you know, with the thick swirls and whorls? That's actually the result of a recessive genetic mutation.
And what's really amazing is when this change happened. For thousands of years, every single domestic cat had those wild-looking mackerel stripes. The blotched pattern, it didn't even show up until the Middle Ages, and it only became common in the 1700s. In fact, it wasn't until the 19th century that people even started to think about breeding cats for specific looks at all. It's a super recent development.
So when you think about it, the cat we know today is the product of an incredible 10-million-year journey. It conquered the world with its adaptability, it struck a deal with convenience with us humans, and then it used its charm to basically go viral across the ancient world. It's a true masterpiece of evolution. It kind of makes you wonder, right? What will its next chapter be?